These are used to maintain a consistent risk to reward ratio when entering a trade. We achieve this by taking the distance between your entry and your stop. We multiply that number by your desired risk to reward ratio, and then we create our profit target. And for an example, an R target of 1 will give you a 1-to-1 risk to reward ratio. An R target of 2, it's a 2-to-1 risk to reward. Our target of 3, 3-to-1. Our target of 4, well, I think we get the point. It's just a way to make sure our risk to reward ratio stays the same on every single trade. But can we just set a profit in our stop based on ticks and keep that same risk to reward on every trade? Well, yes, you can do that. But what happens is, for example, if your stop is based on the bottom of the previous candles, or maybe another indicator, and your stop is going to keep changing value on every single trade, having the exact same stop on every single trade could lead to maybe unwanted stops. It all depends on your strategy. But in this video, I'm going to show you how to set these R targets that automatically adjust based on where your stop is set. And this will all be done using NinjaTrader Strategy Builder. That way you don't actually have to hard code anything. By the way, if you don't want to go through all of the steps in this video, and you still want to take advantage of the R targets or a ton of other customization as well, this and so much more can all be done with just a few clicks using the Predator X order entry. You can also download the free trial on our Discord to get started. But with that, we're moving on to the video. All right, so for this video, I'm going to start by setting our stop at the bottom of the candle when we're going long, and I'm going to set our stop at the top of the candle when we're going short. And then we're going to take that distance between our entry and our stop, we're going to multiply it, and then we're going to create our risk to reward profit targets. Now, in order to not make this video 3 hours long, I'm not going to spend too much time on the candle stop. I do have another video here that goes into a lot more depth on how that works, so check it out if you want. But in this video, we're going to focus mainly on the profit target side of things. So in this video, I'm going to set 3 different profit targets, all based on this risk to reward management. You can choose as many profit targets as you want or as little as you want. This is just going to be an example of how to do that for your own strategy. Nothing that I'm showing in this video is trading advice. This is meant to be used for your own strategy, so you would add your own entry conditions into this sample. So with that, we're moving on to Strategy Builder. To open up Strategy Builder, just go to your control panel, New Strategy Builder, and select New Strategy. Select Next, and you can name this anything that you want. I'm going to say RR Target Example TS. Select Next. Now we have our calculate method. This is just how often your strategy is going to calculate. On bar close means it only calculates once anytime a bar closes. On each tick means anytime there's any sort of tick in the market, it's going to recalculate. This is very CPU intensive. You don't always need something like this unless you're dealing with things like volume, things like that that require calculations on every tick of the market. But for most strategies, on price change is what I recommend, especially when we're building custom exit orders like we're doing in this video. You should be using on each tick or on price change. On price change, obviously, anytime there's a price change in the market, it's going to recalculate. This is good enough for most strategies out there. So because we are not using the final stop and targets page, we are actually building our own custom orders. What we essentially have to do is submit our order, recalculate our strategy, and then submit our stop order immediately after. So for this example, you basically just want to avoid on bar close, just to not leave yourself open until a bar closes. So again, on each tick or on price change, I'm doing on price change. Now, because we're working with multiple profit targets, we have to set our entries per direction. So just go down into this section, the first option up here, we are going to change this to 3. Change this to however many profit targets that you want to set. This is not how many contracts you can enter. This is how many separate orders you can enter at the same time. When we're submitting multiple profit targets, we're not just submitting one order and then splitting our order. We're actually submitting 3 separate orders at the exact same time. So Basically, each profit target is going to have its own stop and its own profit. Don't worry, I'm going to show you how that works, but just keep in mind, these are not individual contracts, these are individual orders. And in each one of those orders, you can have whatever quantity that you want. So once we have that, just hit next. Now for your RR targets, because Strategy Builder is a little bit limited, we have to make extra calculations that we cannot do with regular variables. So for this example, we are going to use a custom series. And all the custom series is very similar to a regular variable where we can store information inside of it, but this is going to store it within the bar itself. So just on whatever bar we select, that information is going to be held within that bar. And this is what's going to allow us to do those extra calculations, like storing the range between our entry and our stop, and the multiplication after to get our profit target. So all we need is something that's going to keep track of our initial stop just for the sake of our profit calculation. So I'm just going to add initial stop series, and this can be a double because we are working with decimals. And then we're going to need something that's going to keep track of the range between our stop and our initial entry. So I'm just going to say something like store range series. And again, this could be a decimal, so make sure we select a double. Once we have that, that should be all that we need for the custom series. Let's select next. Now, inputs and variables. These are going to be the containers that store information for later use. The difference is the inputs. These are the customizable options within your strategy properties. This is going to allow the user to easily change whatever parameters we put in here. Things like your position quantity and your RR target, things like that, that can be easily customized by the user. That's what you want to put in here. So I'm going to say quantity 1. I'm going to leave it default 1. Then I'm going to say quantity 2. This is going to be for our 3 different profit targets because remember, we're entering 3 separate orders. And let me just capitalize that just so they all look the same. And then I'm going to add a third one, quantity 3, and make this one default 3. This can be, again, whatever position you want. So basically the first target's going to have 1, the second target's going to have 2, the third target's going to have 3, for a total position size of 6. Again, I'm just showing this as an example. Change this to whatever works for you. Next, I'm going to set our risk to reward profit targets. So I'm going to say RR targets 1. And this can be a double because your profit target could also have a decimal. So for the default, I'm just going to keep it at 1. That way we can see a 1-to-1 risk to reward. For the minimum, if you want to keep it at 1, you can. If you sometimes want a profit target that's less than 1-to-1 risk to reward, I would suggest changing the minimum to 0.1. Don't do 0 because if you multiply by 0, you're going to get 0. So 0.1 should be about the least amount that you should go. Again, change this to whatever works for your strategy. And I'm going to do this for the rest of our targets as well. So target 2, double, I'm going to do default a 2-to-1 risk to reward and the minimum 0.1. And finally, our third and final target, default, I'm going to do 3.5 just so we can see something a little bit different. And 0.1 is our minimum. Once we have that, let's go down to our variables. The only difference here is these are also containers that store information. These are just not going to be customizable by the user. These are going to keep getting updated as our strategy progresses. So things that store our range values, bools to switch between sets, things like that. This is where we store that information. So to get started, I'm going to do something like stop store variable. I just like to do a variable for this as well. That way it's easier to just call on this value later on, just to keep resubmitting our order. And we'll see why that's important again later on. So this one should be a double because we are working with decimals. So just hit OK. And then we need something that's going to store the multiplied value of our range multiplied by our RR target. So what we do is add, we'll call this range multiply store, and we will change this to a double. Again, it could be a decimal. And then finally, the only other thing that I like to do is set a bool that's going to help us transition from one set to the next. So add initial entry, and I'm going to say bool, and this is going to be false. So that should be all of the variables that we need. Let's move on to our conditions and actions. And this is where we can actually create our strategy. All right, the first thing we're going to build is our entry condition. Now this can be whatever you want. Again, you would put your own strategy conditions into this area. So what I'm going to do, we're just creating a group. I'm going to call it long entry conditions. Change this part. That way anybody using this template knows this is where you would put in your own conditions. And I'm changing this to the if all. That way all of these conditions must be true in order to submit your order. So my entry condition, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm just going to say if the close of the previous bar, that's bars ago 1, is greater than the open of bars ago 1. And then I'm just going to say if price close bars ago 0, that is the most current price, is greater or equal than price high of the previous candle. So once our current price breaks above the previous bar's price. So when we have that, that's going to be our condition to enter. Again, not trading advice. I don't actually trade like this. This is just for the sake of the video. So hit OK. Then something I like to do for all my strategies, I want to make sure our current position is flat. So go to strategy, current market position is equals to strategy, market position, flat. This will ensure you're not currently in a trade before it tries to submit another trade. Next, I want to make sure our bool that we made, our initial entry, is equals to misc false. That way, if it's true, once we submitted our initial order, it's not trying to recalculate this same set. So once we have that, let's submit our long entry orders. So go to the actions section, and we're going to submit 3 separate orders because remember, each target is its separate order. So enter long position, quantity, user input. We're going to just select that integer we created, and the signal name. This signal name will have to match when we submit our exit orders as well. So make sure you remember them, keep them simple, but each one will have to be separate. So this one, I'm going to say long entry 1 and submit that. Now I'm just going to do the same for my second and third target as well. Order management, quantity can be quantity 2. And the signal name will be long entry 2. Then we will do it one last time. Quantity 3. Long entry 3. Now, once we submit our orders, we have to store the value of where we want our stop set. So for this example, when we're entering long, I want to set the stop at the bottom of the candle. So I'm going to add, go to misc, and I'm going to select the stop store value. And I'm going to set. I'm going to use the indicator. And this one is built into NinjaTrader. It just helps us get the minimum value of the period selected. So minimum, the input series, because I want the lowest value of all of the lows selected. We just change the close to the low. And I'm going to scroll down to the period. I'm just looking at the previous 2 candles. So I'm selecting a period of 2. If you want to look back at a bigger range, just increase this number. It'll get the lowest point of that range selected. For me, 2 is plenty good enough. So once we have that, should be good enough. Just hit OK. And now the only other thing that we need is once we submit our order, this initial entry, I'm going to change this to true. So MISC, initial entry, we're going to check mark, and that's going to turn this bool to true. And the only other thing I like to do is just add a print, just so we can see when each set is getting triggered. You don't have to do this, but it does help with diagnostic in case you need it. So string 0, I usually say something like set 1, I add, and then I go to time and I do a time series. That's all we need, and then we know exactly when this set is getting triggered. Now to submit our exit orders, let's move on to set number 2. So we create this set. First thing that we need is we have to ensure we are currently in a long position. We don't want to try and submit exit orders while we're flat or in the opposite direction. So always make sure, go to strategy, current market position is equals to strategy, market position, long. Now, when it comes to Strategy Builder, we are a little bit limited with how we can submit our orders and keep them on the chart. So the first thing that we need to do when calculating our risk to reward profit targets is we need to get the distance between our entry and our initial stop order. So we go to MISC and we're going to set the initial stop series. This is going to be set to our user variable, and we're going to give it the same value as our initial stop variable. This is going to be the same as set number 1, our minimum. This is just going to help us store that same value into the bar. Now we need to get the range between our average position price and our stop value. So go to add, MISC, we're going to set store range series and go down to the store series, set. And because we are in a long position, we're taking the average position price, that's the top number. So strategy, average position, and we're going to subtract minus set, and we're going to subtract the MISC custom series. And from this one, we're selecting custom series, initial stop series. That is our newly defined stop variable. So here we are just storing the range value between entry price and stop. Next, we have to multiply these numbers together. So again, we're just going to add MISC and we select the range multiply store. This we're going to set it to set MISC. Again, we select the custom series. This time we need to select the store range series. This is the entire range. So store range series. We are going to multiply, that's this little star right here, set user input, and we're going to select the RR target 1. So that is for our first RR target. Now we actually should probably do one for each one as well. So we need a different store for each separate target. So let's just go back. So here I'm just going to make new copies of this range multiply store, just so we can use them for our targets number 2 and 3. So range multiply store 2. This is a double. And I'm doing one for target number 2 as well. Range multiply store 3. Double. All right, perfect. Let's go back to our sets. And here we're basically doing the same. We just need to store the value for number 2 and 3. So we go to add, MISC, range multiply store 2. Let me change the spelling on that. All right, that will just bother me later down the road. So again, add misc range multiply store 2. And we're going to set this to misc custom series store range. You can use the same range that we calculated earlier. We're just going to multiply this one by our second RR target. So it should look something like this. And now we do the same for target number 3. So misc range multiply store 3 set misc custom series. Again, the same range, just multiplied by our third target. All right, perfect. Now we have all of our values. Let's actually submit our exit orders. So add order management. We're scrolling down to the exit long position by a limit order from entry signal. Remember, this has to match exactly how we have it on set number 1. So long entry 1, and our limit price is going to go to strategy, average position price, plus we're going to set user variable range multiply store. And the signal name can be long profit 1. The quantity, let's set that to the same quantity number 1. So you're going to have a profit target that's set at the average position price, so break even, plus whatever we defined in here. So your range multiplied by your target. So this is a 1-to-1 risk to reward. So whatever you have between your entry price and your stop is just going to get added as a profit target. And we do the same thing, but for our remaining values. So we can just copy, paste, and change this all to number 2. Average position price, perfect. Range multiply, and we just set this to number 2. Quantity, again, all number 2. And it's just the way it's pasting. For some reason it pastes above. It doesn't really matter which way as long as they are all submitted. So long entry, range multiply, this one is number 3. Quantity, this is number 3 as well. And the signal name, long profit 3. All right, so we have 1, 2, and 3. Now we just have to submit our stop orders. So add order management, and this one's going to be exit long by a stop order. So entry signal, again, we use the same entry signal. And very important, guys, even though we're using the same exact value, these are still all considered separate orders. They're each going to be attached to their initial order entry. So treat them all different, even if they share the same value. So quantity, user input, quantity 1. Signal name, this can be long stop 1. And stop price is going to be our stop store variable. And I just got to do the same for the remaining stops as well. So long entry 2, quantity 2, long stop 2, and we're sharing the same stop value, so we can just leave that as well. And last but not least, long entry 3, the quantity number 3, and this is long stop 3. All right, so again, we have 1, 2, and 3. And what I like to do, again, I'm just going to copy the print from set number 1, and we're going to paste it right in here and change this to set number 2. That way we know exactly when this set is getting triggered. Now I get this asked every single time is how do we do this but for the short side? So let's go over it quick, and then we're going to play this on the chart so we can see exactly how it works. So to make things easy is I'm just going to copy our long set and then just flip everything to the short side. So just right click on it, make a copy, set number 3. Now we change everything to the opposite. So short entry condition. This is going to be, again, we're looking for a red candle. So if the previous bar's close is less than the previous bar's open, it's a red candle. And if the close of the current bar is less or equal to the low of the previous bar, that's going to trigger us into a trade. And yes, we want to make sure our position is flat and our initial entry is false. That's perfectly okay. Now we just need to change our entry orders into a short entry order. So we just go enter short. Again, we set the quantity that we want. Signal name short entry 1. And we're going to do this for all of them. So enter short position, quantity 2, short entry 2. Quantity 3, short entry 3. Now for the stop value, this is going to be different because when we're going long, we want the low of the candles. When we're going short, we want the high of the candles. So we just change this to another indicator. This time we're using the max indicator. This is going to get the highest value of the period selected. So our input is going to be the high. And this one period, again, just a period of 2. This is looking at the current and the previous bar. Hit OK. And I'm just changing our set to set number 3. And that's all we need for that set. Let's copy set number 2. All right, for set number 2, we just have to make sure we are in a short position. So just change this to short. Now, this is just where it gets maybe a little bit tricky because our average position is actually going to be below our stop price. We just have to change our stop range series. So it calculates the stop and it's minus the average position price. This is going to give us the correct calculation. So let me move this over. So I'm just going to set this and I'm going to do MISC first. So custom series, initial stop series. So we're getting our stop value minus set strategy average position price. So we're just flopping these around. Other than that, we're still getting our range series value. We're still getting the multiplied values that will still all stay the same. Now we just have to switch our exit long orders to exit short orders. So let me switch these around. So scroll down to exit short position by limit order. So short entry 1 is the entry signal. Our limit price is again going to go to strategy, average position price. Now, again, we have to flip everything. We're short, so we have to do average position price minus set user variable and our range multiply store. So now it's just going to go down. So default quantity, user input, quantity 1, signal name, short, profit 1. And now we just do that for all of them. So exit short by limit, short entry 2, limit price, strategy, average position price, minus user variable, range multiply store 2, quantity, user input, quantity 2. Short profit 2 is our signal name. Last short entry 3 limit price strategy average position price minus set user variable range multiply store 3 quantity, again quantity number 3, signal name short profit 3. All right, so we have our short limit orders. Now we just got to do our stop orders. So let's do one. Exit short by a stop order this time. Our entry signal, again, short entry 1, user input quantity 1, signal name short stop 1, the stop price, again, we just do the stop store variable that stored our initial stop. And just to save time, I'm going to delete the other ones. And I'm just going to copy and paste and just change them to number 2 and 3. You don't have to do this. You can keep going one by one. This just helps save a little bit of time. Short stop 2. And again, we can keep the same value. Quantity 3, short stop 3. Perfect. Now I'm just going to once again get a print and change this to set number 4. I like to set a final set number 5 just as a safety, just in case we get triggered on the last bar on historical side and it doesn't switch our initial entry bool back to false. So I'm just going to say add strategy current market position equals strategy market position flat misc is the first tick of bar equals to true. And I only really want to trigger this if our user variable initial entry is equals to misc true. So if it's somehow stuck in a true state and there's no way to reset it back with another entry order, then I want to set this misc set initial entry, leave it unchecked back to false. That's going to reset everything and make sure we can re-enter orders. So compile this, let's see how it works on the chart. All right, everything compiled. Let's right click on our chart, strategies, and we're going to go down to the RR target example. Here you can configure your quantity for each target or your RR target distances as well. If you want a video that shows you how to calculate your position size automatically based on the range of these candles, watch this video. I have an indicator that can help you out on Strategy Builder as well. But with that, we're just moving forward, hit apply. We're going to click enable. And here you can see we are entering orders. We're setting our profit, and we are still in a yellow status. This means it's still in a historical state because it hasn't reached a final profit or a stop. So historically, we are still in a trade. So once it hits where a profit should have been or a stop should have been, this will change to green and then it will start taking real-time orders. But for now, let's just scroll back, make sure everything's working. So here we entered a trade, I guess based on this right here, long entry, and then we never hit anything, it just stayed flat, but seems to be taking orders. Everything seems to be working okay. Let's expand this just so we can get a better picture. and then we're going to hit play. So again, remember, we're waiting for that third profit target or for the price to retrace and get stopped out. Let's increase this just a little bit.
Order canceled.
All right, so here we just went a little bit too quick. Here we can see we hit our short third profit target, and now we entered into a new short order. So let's see where our stop got set. So we're zooming in just a little bit. We can see our stop got set at the top of the previous candle when it entered that short order. Let's take our modified Fibonacci tool and we're going to put it right to our average position price. So we can see our first profit target was at 1R. It already got hit. I had it at max, but this is where our first profit target was. Our second profit target, let me pull this up. Our second profit target of 2, that's at 2-to-1 risk to reward. And then our third profit target at 3.5, it's down here. It's not quite at 3, not quite at 4, it's at 3.5. So again, just the same distance between your stop and your entry price multiplied by whatever number we set as our risk to reward target. Let me keep playing.
Order canceled.
So now I hit target number 2.
Order submitted.
All right, so there we hit our third profit target. We entered into a short trade right away. This time completely different stop distance. But again, I'm going to set our modified fib tool from the top right to where we entered into the trade. And you can see it's the same distance, profit target 1, 2, and then set at 3.5 is down here. And I know I'm gonna get this asked a lot. If you want this modified fib tool, I just go into the fib tool properties, just expand this, set your levels. And this is how I have mine set up. It's at 0 and then positive 100. That is the distance between your stop and your initial entry. And then the negative targets just help me get those risk to reward targets. So -1, 1R, negative 200, 2R, so on and so forth. You can modify these however you want. And just make sure you save them as default. Save as default. If you use your regular fib tools for something else, this might not be helpful. But for me, just to see this helps me get a little bit of a visual. So again, I'm just going to keep playing it, see if we can get a long order as well.
Orders.
There we go. So now we have a long order. So again, we have that low point, drag it right up to our entry price, and we have risk to reward 1, 2, and then 3.5. So that's how we set risk to reward targets on NinjaTrader using Strategy Builder. Again, this could be done a lot easier using the Predator, but I hope you guys found this video useful for your strategy. If you guys have any questions or comments or suggestions, leave them down below. Let me know on Discord. But as always, take care, enjoy.